We are 1.3 million people, so slightly larger. But I guess in the big picture of the world, we're still tiny. And that really is the context why we started trying things out digitally in government, in the whole country, since late 90s. Basically, that was a time, some of you know, when internet was going mainstream. Digital was taking off for the first time. It's a dot-com bubbles and everything like that. So from that point of view, from that point onwards, we started saying, can we somehow utilize this new technology to be a better civil service, to be a better government? And first, these were a bunch of experiments. First, there was really trying it out. You know, moving first services online, making tax declarations easy, things like that. From that, we introduced the next things. It worked. It indeed turned out that as a small place, that was our chance to be more effective, basically be bigger as we otherwise would be more productive as a public sector, and get results in government. So from these first experiments, it became a conscious strategy, a really a deliberate, systematic effort to do everything we can digitally in our government. Guys, can we get this to work? All right, they're fixing it. So from the point of experiments and then became a conscious strategy, if we jump forward to today, that's about 25 years later, so what does that really mean? And that's your tour to Estonia. It means that from citizen, from end user point of view, almost anything and everything you need to do with the government, you can get done online. So it really means any interaction, any transaction that you need to have for public service, whether it's things you need to do, bureaucracy like declarations, things you're mandated to do, or things you want to do, there's a digital way of doing it. And it literally is everything. So we used to joke and say that, look, you only have to show up to get married. Even this can be now online in terms of at least government procedure. So it means that digital ways of doing things have transformed every part, every sector in government. No ministry, no agency has been untouched and has deeply worked to change how their services work, how the services are offered, how their services function for the people in the country. So you can think about anything in your lives, like how do you change your address, how do you send your kid to school, anything like that, all parts of the government. Now, and it's not just citizens, a very important part is also, thank you, that's where it's for entrepreneurs. So for citizens, yes, you can lead a better daily life. For entrepreneurs, it means all the bureaucracy, all the cost, all the red tape involved in government, that's been reduced to minimum. Why? Because you can get everything done digitally. From the point you start a company to anything involved in running this company, like any declaration, statistics, taxes, customs, full digital. It matters a lot because, look, for a company, if you manage to save on bureaucracy, you literally save money. And so this has even enabled Estonia to start something called e-residency, offering this great business environment virtually to everyone around the world. We even have some Maldivians joined Estonia as e-residents now from abroad. But it's not just these bureaucratic transactions, not just the sort of over-the-counter things as they used to be called. Estonia has tried to use digital means to also fundamentally transform the harder, the more complex public service areas. So if you think about health, for example, it means that if I go to see a doctor, a lot of that visit happens digitally for that matter. I don't even have to go, perhaps, there's digital health and like telehealth and all the other means. But for example, if I go to see a doctor, my medical history is there. So for the last 25 years, if I've been treated, now for the next time, perhaps there's more data to rely on. I can be better treated the next time. These days, government is adding genomics data to that could be more prevention in that. So it's trying to not just get things done easier in terms of bureaucracy, but really changing the core of how public service delivery is being offered. And lastly, it's not just the things that people have to do, but also things that people want to do. So government has tried to make these sort of interactions more accessible, all the way to offering online voting. So if it's parliament voting time, you could be enjoying, well, much nicer weather in the Maldives here still cast your vote and still be part of democracy and have a say where the country goes. About half of people do it this way, and why this matters is that, look, these days everybody's traveling, busy at work, whatever. You could be anywhere, but still have this great participation channel. So it's about accessibility. Now, this is the glimpse. Hopefully it gives you a taste. Now, I have to say two things. First of all, that what we set out to do, indeed, is not just a hope or lip service. From sector to sector, we see the fruits. Not just better services, but indeed productivity. So being as small as we are, you can relate, then being productive means a lot, meaning we can do more as a government. So whether it's, how taxes are collected, or how there are smaller queues in hospitals now, or how police finds more stolen cars, again and again we see the productivity benefits. And that's the reason why the government has not stopped in terms of transformation. It's not like it was done, everything was online. No, it continues again and again. So it's been about setting in motion virtuous circle of constant reinvention, if you wish. Transformation keeps going. These days, for example, what the government is up to, two things. First of all, even if everything has been online, it doesn't mean that it's been the best possible service always. There are legal reasons, bureaucracy reasons, things that stand on your way. You may not be able to do the full transformation first. Plus, sometimes it's a journey that takes a bit of longer, basically just to drop a few waters before larger change happens. This means, even if things were put online, now a lot of it is being redesigned to be actually one proactive bundle. So as opposed to, say your child is born. I use that example from my own life. Your child is born, yes, you can do everything online, but it's 4 or 5 different interactions somewhere, hopefully in one app or one portal, but still different things you have to go through. A bit of different logic. Why do we need them at all? Why couldn't the service just be that the government sends me a note saying, hey, congrats on the new baby, click here if you want to name the baby, and by the way, the benefits are being sent to your bank account. Well, it can be done because government knows the baby was born, because hospital made the entry to digital registry. Digital records immediately start. So from that point of view, it could be, as opposed to waiting you to apply, waiting for you to ask the government for something, it could be about proactively serving your need, and you can save even more time and have an even more easier way of bureaucracy, because you just get it done much lesser clicks, one go, and at the point you need it the most. So this sort of bundling is being done all over the place, whether you start a company, whether your kids goes to school, so forth. And it will be like a radical redesign in terms of easiness of getting things done with government. The other thing that the government's up to, because of the productivity aim, is doing everything they can to use artificial intelligence these days. Estonia was an early starter. About 2018 onwards, we started experimenting with this technology. Now it has moved to the point whereby the government intention is that everything you need to do with the government, all those services I was telling about, should be available through you, not through your app or your portal somewhere online, but through the virtual assistant in your phone, in your pocket, in your car. With voice, you can get things done. So if your passport's about to expire, as opposed to you remembering it or checking your passport and then going somewhere online and applying, somebody like Siri or whatever platform you have, Siri asks you, hey, Siim, your passport's expiring, shall I get you a new one? You literally say, yes, and then passport shows up at your door. That's the sort of experience that, again, is radically can simplify how we get things done with the government. The reason I've been telling this as a bit of story and journey is that it doesn't happen by itself. Well, first of all, it's so easy for me to join you here and talk about 25 years in half an hour. But secondly, that means that there's been a lot of trial and error, a lot of things that have been learned along the way. But secondly, it has taken development of civil service to really build services like that, to reach this point whereby transformation has been embedded into all parts of government and all parts of life. So what have been some of the ways what are some of the changes that have happened? What are some of the ways it has become possible? I'll share a few. Well, first of all, we see this again and again. Digital transformation sometimes is seen as, the cool thing, the buzzword is. It's like, we should be doing something with digital. For Estonia, it has always been a very clear reason why we're doing this. And so it starts from a vision, it starts from a strategy. And that very much is a civil service thing to do. Let's be clear, why are we doing this? For Estonia, it was productivity, it was efficiency, how to get more done as a small government. That was the lens, the perspective applied to then see how can we transform a service we offer, how can we transform our back office, how can we now use AI. So that gave a lens, a purpose to trying things out and getting more done, basically. Secondly, we've had to perhaps learn a bit of the hard way from the start, but what has really made this deep penetration of digital possible has been constantly saying, look, even if we're out for efficiency, we have to think about who's the end user, what do they need, what do people need from us. In the early days, I have to say, it was very much a technological project. Things were built up technologically exactly for the sake of improved document flow, or let's somehow get more taxes in. But then they learned, then the government learned, look, if you're not really doing this in a user-centric way, if you're not really doing this with people and their needs in mind, if you just do it as a technology thing, then people will not really use those services. They will be available, but you don't get the impact. You need to build good services for people to get the impact you seek after, even if the impact is efficiency. So having the right focus, having the right methods, having the right skills to build good services has been a very strong part of the way. And we had to relearn a lot on that. We had to redesign many services later on because initially they weren't built the best ways. Third thing, we could talk more about this, but the point is very simple. As different entities throughout the government go about transforming digitally their field, this can be greatly accelerated, and this work helped by having some shared platforms to build on. Things that you don't have to then reinvent from ministry to ministry, from agency to agency. And these are very strong pillars for the whole digital society. It's things like national digital identity, things like data exchange, things like having a common portal, like you guys are having here, to offer services from. Building blocks like that mean that if you can rely on them, then every ministry, your job is easier because you just focus on transforming your flows, your processes, your services for your users. And by reusing and plugging into these building blocks, these platforms, and in the end, you save time and money, by the way, in doing that. So it's these platforms that have accelerated the journey in Estonia. By the way, made it also more secure, but that's a different story. And so what it means is that we really had to make sure that our government, our public sector throughout, knows about those platforms, knows how to integrate them, knows basically that they are there and they can be useful, so that they won't even think about reinventing the wheel. So in that sense, it means understanding the architecture is a technical term of the government that you can plug into to then do the job of transformation in your field quicker. Now, in all of this, obviously, we've got to be careful about risks. And I mean, that's the very government way of thinking as well. You immediately think about, okay, what can be the downside? And you should. In digital world, the risks are obvious. There can be privacy issues, there can be cybersecurity threats. And in that sense, cyber security and privacy are like the other side of the coin. You want to go digital, you got to do the risk, you got to manage those risks very well. In Estonia, that realization came early. So from the point of starting to experiment with digital tools, it was always featured in, okay, how do we manage the risks of possible cyber attack, for example? It meant designing technology in a certain way. It meant, careful thinking about how do we build a process of safeguards around the technology we use. So, for example, I mentioned it as a national medical health record. So how do you keep sensitive data like that secure? There are different technological things you can do. However, a lot of it comes to the process of how do you make sure that nobody peeks in, or if they do, that the right flags go up. In Estonia, one of the ways the technology and process combine is that I can see who has accessed my medical record. Basically, the flag can go up, and I can actually start, to complain or otherwise ask why this next doctor was looking into my stuff, for example. Basically, technologically, it means log file is being made visible to me about my data. Very simple, technically speaking. But the process of that is powerful, but it gives me oversight about and my chance to manage my data. So designing that and understanding the need to design for that has been a way to design good services and get people to adopt them, because they understand, they know, and they see how then the risks are being managed. There can be more trust if they understand how trust is being preserved in the service for them. And obviously, I'm not speaking theory here. Estonia has been battle-tested. It was the first country to go through a cyber war back in 2007. Even these days, look, there's constant trialing going on, constant threats happening, but it has never gone down. Why? Not because it's somehow perfect, but it just pays enough attention in the transformation to managing the risks. And exactly, in order to be digital, you got to manage the risk side. Fifth thing, I already mentioned before, but in many ways, Estonian journey has been the journey of experimentation. Things like data exchange on national level was not really done before. It was a hunch it could work. It was experiment to try to make it work. And as it worked, it became really a platform for the whole government to build on. That's the X road to some of you who may have heard about this, the technical solution. Online voting. There was a lot of debate, can it be done securely? It was really first an experiment to see how it can be done securely. And then from that, as it proved it's possible, scaling that through become the majority voting means now. E-residency, that anyone in the world can apply and start a company in Estonia virtually, again, was an experiment. So my point is, there's a leadership point here. Basically, you've got to try things out, you've got to take a few risks. If things have not been done before, if you're transforming, you're taking risks anyway. Things can go wrong, right? But it's also about really learning and implementing the experimentation as a method of work. Some people want to call it agile development, some want to call it something else, but the point is there are concrete ways of how you can experiment safely, even in government, and then fix what doesn't work, scale things that do work. It's about building this process, and that is a skill set that can be learned. The sixth thing, Estonia, being as small as the country is, it's not been just somehow an enlightened public sector story. In many ways, all the things I've been speaking about have been a public-private partnership effort, so joining forces, talents, money from all sectors, and more fundamentally, it's been a nationwide effort, because nobody has enough talent, money, resource in their silos to do everything themselves. So even to do something like a data exchange platform, that we need to combine forces, we need to really align the government behind that. Collaboration doesn't somehow happen magically. It could, I wish it could, but it can be managed. And again, the skill is how to build collaboration like that, how to unite the government like that. Another part, obviously, how to get things done is you've got to have delivery capacity. You've got to really not just dream up things, agree on things, but also get them done technically. So how do you manage those teams? How do you really build up organizations that are ready to serve people well and have the ability to build things digitally, even with outside partners? That's a skill set we've had to learn through the years. But most fundamentally, if I were to have a shorter talk with you, I would really say this. If the core essence of what Estonia has learned on the digital transformation journey, how to get it done, is that it's not the technology, it's not the digital of that term that matters. It's a transformation and managing the transformation that matters. Each time, and there's been many, where we failed in Estonia, we failed because we didn't do change management properly. For example, we were launching digital prescriptions, so it means that I don't have to go to a pharmacy with my paper slip from a doctor. If I need to get the medicine, doctor issues it digitally, I just go to the pharmacy. I might even skip the doctor's visit physically, right? I get faster cure, faster medicine. When this was launched, it was built technologically beautiful. It was about to be launched the 1st of January, and it didn't work for the first 5 days. Why? Because nobody had really managed to bother to lead that change, that effort with the pharmacists. As simple as that. So they weren't trained properly, informed properly, supported properly. The policy framework wasn't even ready really properly. So my point is, people focus on the tech side of things. Yes, technologically it could have worked. But it's that other part, like if you wish, the part of the iceberg under the sea is managing the change in its entirety. You want to get something like, a nice service done. You want to make it easy to start a company online. There's so many moving parts you got to juggle together. Coordination between agencies. How do you need to change policy or legislation stuff? How do you really train your folks? I mean, it's the ABCs of change management you got to systematically do, and then transformation happens. Then the impact from doing the things digitally starts or comes. Otherwise, exactly, you can fail. Or at best, technology becomes ready, but remains underused, which means that the investment has been in vain. You might have done the technology side, sort of done the transformation, but you don't get the fruits. Why? Because it's the effort to manage the change that matters. And it's not just lip service. It's not just saying, hey, okay, let's have a change management meeting. Change management is about doing certain things rhythmically, regularly, systematically in the daily job for everyone involved in those projects, in those engagements, in those transformation initiatives. I'm not going to show you a change management framework. I mean, you can choose whatever you like. There's many out there. You can learn them from books, you learn them in courses, business schools, whatever. Choose whatever, but do it systematically. That brings the transformation. Now, and that really is the point here. That's really the essence of Estonian journey. There is technology, there are some technological features, innovations if you wish, but 80% of the effort and 80% of the result has been in terms of getting transformation done, being effective in getting things done in terms of transformation. Now from this, if I'm about to translate all this Estonia story to somehow thinking about, okay, what does it really mean for civil service, or a lot of the work that you do in the Civil Service Commission here and in the Maldives at large, okay, how do you build the competences, the skill set for a civil service to do everything digitally, for example, to transform throughout, for example, like Estonia has done. And I'll share a few thoughts. Like I said, they're reflected not just from my country, but more globally now. First of all, I think we should be very conscious about digital competences is not just one type of things or one type of skills or ability. Oftentimes people talk about it in the rudimentary stage, like that's the bottom of the pyramid, if you wish. To say, hey, can you use this stuff digitally? Do you know how to get online? Can you crunch data? Do you have digital literacy? That's the beginning point, of course. But beyond that, there are other sort of types of competencies you got to think about. For example, if you are a policy officer, it's not just enough that, or if you're in charge of a service and transforming that service now, you got to be able to analyze, is my service working? You got to be able to think, okay, and you got to have the skills, how do I redesign my service now? How can I transform it to a better process? And this goes all the way to the managerial roles. How do you build your team, your organization, the readiness of your civil service in order for the rest of the transformation to happen? So it's a hierarchy of skills that you got to think about if you want to boost transformation readiness or future readiness in terms of digital transformation. The literacy clearly has to be there, no doubt. There has to be the specialists or more sort of concrete skill, functional skills. but there also has to be the digital leadership skills to really make the whole triangle and the whole pyramid come together. Now, what does it really mean? So it doesn't mean that everybody has to know everything. Look, if you're in charge of a service, yes, you should have practical service design skills. Okay, how do I create user-friendly services? These are universal methods globally, basically. If you're just a frontline officer somewhere, then you need to be able to, of course, help people with a service, use it. You got to have that digital literacy. But if you're the manager, if you're executive, state or deputy minister in this field, you don't need to know the actual tools and tricks of service design. You got to understand that. You got to be aware of that. Your job is to figure out what are the processes you put in place, what's the team you put in place, how do you lead them so that services can be built by the right people. And then from that, they can be then offered the right way. So a lot of it is about trying to figure out and agree what is really the competence framework that you need in your country, in your organization. What do digital competences mean for you, given the types of jobs you do, given the levels of government you have, and so forth. So in many ways, if you want to boost digital transformation readiness, it's first taking one step back saying, hey, what sort of competencies do we need in the first place? Some might be good already, some might be more lagging. What is it that we need to catch up on, and at what levels? Leaders might need one type, service owners might need another type. So this is basically the heart of planning. The most critical thing, and this is really what we see makes a difference between country to country, is digital leadership. Why? First of all, because that perhaps is the hardest, well, not the hardest, but it's the one that's being taught the less. Digital literacy, there's so many courses and things to go around with. Countries have paid a lot of attention here as well, right? Functional skills, there's more of them also to go around, especially if you have more youth now entering the public service and you train your existing staff, exactly, from everything from like data analytics to service design to so on. But it's the leadership that gets often the least attention in terms of even training effort. However, the other skills will not be practically impactfully applied if the right organizations, the right processes are not in place. So that's why leadership makes such a difference. You need to put in place the right enabling environment for transformation to happen. But digital leadership, fine. Okay, what does it mean? So in Digital Nation, that's the company I run, we really have built this into a framework, fully free for that matter, to say, okay, based on what we learned in Estonia, what we see now in other countries, what does digital leadership mean? What would managers at any level in government need to know and be able to do for transformation to happen, for the right processes and teams to be there? And we have split it really in two parts. First of all, you don't need to be a tech specialist, but you need to understand what to ask for. What is it that you can build in terms of, and what is it that you can do in terms of digital transformation? This means a few things. It means understanding what do good services look like. Often this means understanding your country's policy environment. For example, is there like a service standard in place? What's the architecture you can plug into, like in Estonia? Like, is there data exchange? How does digital entity help you? How does OneGov work here? So knowing that and knowing basically how can these sort of building blocks boost you. It's about understanding what data can do for you. It's about understanding what might be next on the horizon. It's about understanding the basics of, that the threats are out there, what the risks are in terms of, for example, cybersecurity. Again, you don't need to be a specialist. As a leader, you got to be aware to ask the right questions and to understand what your gaps might be. And secondly, to be able to then demand or push your team to deliver on this. And to do so, that's where the other part, and even more important part comes in, is the skills and ability, the know-how in terms of how to get stuff done, how to really build things. There is a bit of the technological side to that. So, if you really want to push your team to build good services, yes, you got to understand how does basically good service design work. what are the methods to really build a user-friendly service flow. It helps if you understand a bit about how these days tech is being developed, like how does agile development work, or how can you really sort of get the most of your teams in that sense. But it's mostly about putting in place the right rails. What's the operating model? How do you build things in your organization? It's about how do you govern the transformation. You want to get digital health done. How do you work with the hospitals? You want to get transportation change. How do you govern that part of that sector in terms of transformation? So designing steering processes and mechanisms, designing the operating model, designing your roadmap in that sense, and having the skills and understanding for that, that's a very core part of digital leadership. But third part is really perhaps the most managerial in some ways. It's about becoming a leader who can then push for transformation to happen through having the right incentives in place. These are usually the budgets, the procurement frameworks, your own internal management mechanisms. It's about how do you work with your stakeholders. If you need to coordinate things, how do you build collaboration? Like I said in Estonia, collaboration was a big part. Managing expectations from a wider public. So how do you really work in terms of your end users? How are you skilled in communication? Do you really know how to work with a digital team? It's these sort of managerial competences that really make the biggest difference. And by the way, part of it is also how do you yourself effectively self-manage in terms of change management. So that's a block of competences we see critical. And they all come together. So if you know and understand what to build, if you understand then how basically technically things get built, then you understand how to build your organization, then you're set up for good transformation outcomes. Now from this, I really want to emphasize the last part. The reason why I've been so keen on the managerial part of this is that I've had the privilege to talk to among them 20 peers who have led digital transformation through the governments in very many different countries around the world. These stories ended up in the book I edited. And what is the main message from those stories, again and again in the book, how do you get digital transformation done, is that when the leaders get delivery done with their teams. So it really is about exactly these sort of skills, these sort of competences that are the biggest differentiator between those countries who make transformation leaps and who try and perhaps fail a bit. Now from this, I really want to end by two things. First of all, if there's anything to remember from this talk, and in terms of thinking about taking your civil service forward, it's really this. Technology is important, but it's a smaller part. Building up your capacity, building up your competencies to manage transformation, that's the name of the game, because 80% of effort will be in transformation, not the tech side. Technology, you can even copy-paste sometimes. You can use proven solutions from the world. How you apply them here, that's going to be transformation management. Now, and why this matters is that I think you guys are at the pivotal moment. We had a privilege last year to work along with the government here in terms of operationalizing the Maldives 2.0 vision, coming up with concrete roadmap for that. Getting this roadmap done and the dreams of transformation done will exactly require a build-up of civil service ready for that, and especially the leadership pushing with the right skill sets in the right direction. So I hope you can use this momentum, get behind it with your civil service, and then 2.0 dreams can happen. But I really want to end up with this. At the end of day, something has gotten mixed there. It basically should say, just do it. At the end of the day, it's not like we had a perfect plan and we had all the stones fall into sequence in Estonia and then we started doing transformation. No, we just started. 25 years ago, we didn't really know. As I said, it was a lot of experiment. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. It's okay if you don't have all the competences yet. Just start. And you can learn, you can figure, you can build it along the way. The point is, for Maldives 2.0 as well, for example, it's about just start, and then you'll get there. Thank you so much.